Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 30 minutes of Torah study for the Torah portion of Noach. We're going to begin with a brief overview of the Parsha. God instructs Noach, the only righteous man in a world consumed by violence and corruption, to build a large wooden teva, an ark, coated within and without with pitch. A great flood, says God, will wipe out all life from the face of the earth, but the ark will float upon the water, sheltering Noach and his family, as well as a male and female of each animal species. Rain falls for 40 days and nights, and the waters churn for 150 more days before calming and beginning to recede. The ark settles on Mount Ararat, and from its window, Noach dispatches a raven, and then a series of doves, to see if the waters were abated from the faces of the earth. When the ground dries completely, exactly 1 year after the onset of the flood, God commands Noach to exit the ark and repopulate the earth. Noach builds an altar and offers sacrifices to God. God swears to never again destroy all of humankind, and he sets the rainbow as a testimony of his new covenant with the human race. God also commands Noach regarding the sacredness of life. Murder is deemed a capital offense, and while people are permitted to eat the meat of animals, they're forbidden to eat flesh or blood taken from a living animal. Noach plants a vineyard and becomes drunk on its produce. Two of Noach's sons, Shem and Japheth, are blessed for covering up their father's nakedness, while his third son, Ham, is punished for taking advantage of his father's debasement. So this is a pretty exciting parsha. The Torah tells us that humanity became so corrupt that God felt that this is not working. We need to erase, we need to wipe everyone out, and we're going to begin again with Noach. There's an ark, the animals are in the ark, there's a flood, phenomenal story. But many commentators ask the question, as amazing as a story as this is, it appears to be in the wrong book. Because the Torah is an instruction manual for life, and it would appear that this story is more for the history books than for the Torah book. Now you could respond, but wait a minute. The Torah is an instruction manual for life. There is much that we could learn from the story of the corruption of mankind and the righteousness of Noach. However, the commentaries respond that if we want to learn about the corruption of man and the righteousness of man, isn't Abraham a more appropriate person to study from? Because yes, Noach was righteous, but you know who was also righteous? Abraham. Abraham was a God-fearing man. He lived in a world that was corrupt. He lived a life of kindness. He lived a life of righteousness. He lived a life of faith with God. He cared for the dignity of other people. Abraham was the first Jew. Noach is fabulous. However, Noach was not Jewish, right? Noach is a more universal figure. Important, part of the history books, but when it comes to Torah, isn't the story of Abraham more relevant? Shouldn't that be what we are focusing on? Another problem is Noach was told by God, the world is corrupt. I'm going to wipe it out. What this essentially means is God was giving Noach a job. Your job was make sure a flood doesn't happen. Make sure that people do not remain corrupt. Inspire them, teach them, lift them up, transform them, make the world a better place so I don't have to wipe everyone out. But he did not do so. He failed to inspire even a single person. The flood did have to be brought on the world, and everyone was wiped out. However, not only did Noach fail then, you could argue that it's still a failure today. Because look at the world that we live in today. Thousands of years after the flood, there is unspeakable violence, evil, crime, and corruption that we are surrounded by, even in the United States of America in the year 2022. Which leads us to this question. Have you ever tried to influence someone to improve their behavior, become more ethical, or show more compassion? Have you ever met someone? Have you ever been around a person who was going through serious issues? What can you do? How do you speak to them? How do you inspire them? How do you get them to change? How do we reach people? And in turn, how do we reach ourselves as well? And perhaps even more importantly, as everyone is focused on, there are people out there in the world today, like Kanye West, talented, charismatic, beyond wealthy, yet the anti-Semitism that flows from their mouth is beyond anything that you could possibly imagine. It's almost hard to believe it's real. What do you say to somebody like this? What do you say to a Kanye West? Is there hope, or are we destined for another flood? The first thing to say is that we have to recognize that Judaism is not a proselytizing religion. We are not looking for converts. We are not out there recruiting. That does not mean, though, that the Torah does not have a message for the non-Jewish world. The Torah absolutely does have a message for the non-Jewish world, and it is generally referred to under the heading of the 7 Noahide laws. Let's look how Rambam describes them. The Rambam writes that 6 mitzvahs were commanded to Adam: the prohibition against worshiping false gods, cursing God, murder, incest and adultery, and theft, as well as the command to establish laws and courts of justice. The prohibition against eating flesh from a living animal was added for Noah, as the verse states, "Nevertheless, you may not eat flesh with its life, which is its blood." Thus, there are 7 mitzvahs. So while God gave to the Jewish people 613 mitzvahs, God gave to all mankind 6 mitzvahs starting with Adam. A 7th mitzvah was added to Noah. These 7 here are just a general outline. There are numerous details. What is the goal? The goal is to create a moral society, to create an ethical society, a civilized society built on the foundation of the idea that God created the world and there's meaning and there's purpose to everyday life. And this is a message that is not meant to be a secret. In fact, the Jewish people are charged with the mission to be a light unto the nations. It's not just a nice idea. If you have time, when you have time, this is a sacred obligation. This is a sacred responsibility. This is central to what it means to be the Jewish people. We're not a nation who exists independently to achieve our own personal, individual righteousness and relationship with God. We are created to serve not just God, but the world, to be a light into the nations and to share the message of the 7 Noahide laws with the greater and broader society around us. The Rebbe sums it up like this: it is plainly obvious that anyone with the ability to influence a non-Jew in any way to fulfill the 7 mitzvahs has the obligation to do so from God's command to Moshe. Anyone with business relationships with non-Jews or the like must use their relationship to influence people. The correct way to do this is to explain in a way that is meaningful to you that God has given humanity 7 commandments to fill the world with justice and uprightness. So we're not trying to convert people, but we are trying to tell people the Torah has a message for you. The world was created for a purpose. You can have a deep, intimate relationship with God through these 7 commandments. Moral, ethical, civilized society, we can make a home for God. Now, Noach was not successful in his time relaying this message to the people where he lived. However, if God gave us this responsibility, that means it is doable. It is possible. We could influence the rest of the world. We could impact people and transform lives. So how do you do it? Why did Noach fail? And ultimately, how are we going to be able to succeed? The answer is an idea that is absolutely at the foundation. It is the bedrock of what it means to live in an ethical, moral society. And this is one of the greatest gifts that God gave not just to the Jewish people, but to mankind and the entire world, which is this idea here. And God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. This is not just a beautiful, poetic, biblical type of a language. With this verse, God is telling us what is it that makes human beings unique, that separates us from all of the rest of creation. It's not just that we are the most sophisticated of all creation. It's not just if you look at all of creation and you look at the least sophisticated to the most sophisticated form of creation, and it is man who has the most sophisticated intellectual and emotional system. We're sitting at the top. Some of creation is more sophisticated than others. That's not at all what we're trying to say. When the Torah says that God created man in his image, that the human being is created in the image of God, the Torah is telling us that human beings are a different category of creation altogether, completely different, completely separate from everything else that's in existence. There's something godly, there's something divine, there's a divine image that exists within each and every one of us, which makes us unique. And each and every person possesses this spark. Rabbi Akiva used to say, humans are cherished for they were created in the image of God. As an even greater sign of love, God let humanity know that they were created in his image. As it says, for in the image of God, he made humanity. Every human being has within them a piece of God, a spark of God, something that is divine and holy, which gives every single human being infinite value, which means just by virtue of the fact that they were created, that they're worthy of love, worthy of respect, dignity, and even awe. When we view people from this perspective, from the perspective that every human being is created in the image of God, we then have the ability to build a beautiful world together with respect, with dignity for every single human being. Rabbi Akiva refers to all people. The verse he quotes as proof applies to all people, not Jews exclusively. Rabbi Akiva sought to empower all people, including non-Jews. Maimonides writes about this in the Law of Kings. Rabbi Akiva intended to pave a broad path for all people to achieve upstanding character, as we were commanded by Moshe to do so, as explained in Maimonides. We ought to influence them with words and draw their hearts towards their Creator's will. Mention their goodness and instill in their hearts that as the bearers of God's image, they are cherished and possesses an internal moral compass. Therefore, he quotes the verse where God supplies his reason for commanding them, for God made humanity in his image. This verse refers to non-Jews, as does Rabbi Akiva. So what is the message of this idea that every human being is created in the image of God? And that then God gave us the 7 Noahide laws for all of mankind? The message is God cherishes you. God values you. God loves you. That's why he created you in his image. And he gave you these laws in order for you to be able to be the best person that you can possibly be, in order for you to achieve the ultimate success and to create the ideal civilized society. So God created you in his image. He created everyone in his image, which means just as God cherishes you, we should cherish every single person, because every single person is created in that image of God. This is the secret to influencing other people, sharing this key fundamental principle. This is what the sages mean with humans are cherished, for they were created in the image. He is informing us how a Jew must and can influence all citizens of the world to fulfill God's commandments by explaining how very precious they are, being created in the image, and as such, they must follow their Creator's will. Yes, this is a radical idea, but it's an idea that is going to produce radical results. Because what is the message that people are hearing now? The message that people hear now is human beings are the most sophisticated form of animals. They're dolphins. They're brilliant. They're smart. They can communicate. but human beings are even smarter, right? Human beings are even above the ability of dolphins. But here's the problem. If you tell people that people are the most sophisticated of all animals, you know how people are ultimately going to behave and act and treat each other? Like animals. Maybe like sophisticated animals, but at the end of the day, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and people are going to treat each other like animals. Selfishness, ego, powered by the sophisticated brain and emotional system of the human being. However, when you teach people that we are not just sophisticated animals, that we are created in the image of God, that means that every single one of us absolutely has infinite value. We have inherent worth. Our worth is not conveyed to us by other people, by society, by the people around us, but rather each and every one of us has infinite self-worth. And the same thing, that is how we are going to view other people. In such a world, is it possible to be a dog-eat-dog world? There's no such thing as a dog-eat-dog world, because every person, me, you, my neighbor, my friend, everyone is created in the image of God. When you recognize your own self-worth, you don't want to waste it. You can't waste it. You're too valuable. You're too important to waste it. Can you hurt another people? Can you rob another person? Could you commit violence against another person? How? That person is also created in the image of God. It's simply not possible to do so. But let's try to explore and understand this a little bit deeper. What does it mean that we are created in the image of God? What does God look like? One of the fundamental principles of Jewish faith is that God does not have a look. God does not have an appearance. God does not have a shape. God does not have any limbs. So what does it mean when we say that we are created in the image of God? What it means is that if you want to talk about the very truth, the very core, the very essence of what it is a human being, it is not our body, of course, and it's not even our mind. Is it in fact our soul? It is our soul which is created in the image of God. It is our soul which is literally something that which is godly. The very core of our existence and of our being is a godly spark. What is the agenda? What is the goal of that godly spark? Simple. One thing. It is absolutely selfless, and it wants to fulfill the will of God. The soul, if it had the ability to do so, would literally jump out of our body, merge, unite, and become one with God. The goal of the soul is to merge, to become one, to unite with God, even at the expense of losing its independent existence. That is what a soul is all about. The soul is not interested in what it wants. The soul is only interested in what God wants. The soul is 100% God-centered. Another way of saying it is a soul is absolutely and completely altruistic. So what does it mean when the Torah says we are created in the image of God? It means that the core of our existence is a soul, which means we all have the capacity to rise above our own ego, our own desires, our own selfishness, our own cravings, our own lusts. That is what it means to be created in the image of God. To be created in the image of God means our core identity is the ability to be selfless, and it's the ability to rise above any challenges, internal and external, that we experience in our life. At our core, we are spiritual people, we are moral people, we are ethical people, and have the ability to build a civilized society. And we need to tell this to people. We need to share this with people. Don't just tell them, use your brain and you could get out of any negative obstacle, challenge that you're experiencing in life. We have to tell them, use your soul. Dig a little bit deeper. A person is not trapped due to their economic situation, to their lack of education, due to their temperament, to their character that they're born with, to their behavior pattern. A person is not trapped at all because you were created in the image of God. You have the ability to rise above these internal or external obstacles that you're dealing with. But you might ask yourself, who am I to tell this to someone? Who am I to tell somebody how to live? I'm not a preacher. And even if I was, who likes to be preached to? Who's interested in hearing this? The Rebbe responds, don't be so humble. Don't estimate your abilities. And even more importantly, don't underestimate the power of the message. The Rebbe says, in fact, the world is hungry for this message. This world is thirsty to hear this message that we are not animals, that we are created in the image of God, and that we can rise above our ego and our selfishness and the circumstances of our birth and so on. Why is it that we are so hungry for this message? Because the reality is we are created in the image of God. So therefore, what do we want and desire more than anything else? To hear that message, that we are created in the image of God, in order that we can actually express it and live our life in a way that's consistent with our most inner core and inner self. We need to be giving and sharing this message with other people. So you got Kanye West, and he says that the Jews control the media, the Jews control the banks, and so on and so forth. We need to change the narrative. We need to change the message that people are hearing. When people think of the Jewish people, they cannot be thinking about the media and they cannot be thinking about banks. What should they be thinking about? Who are the Jewish people? The Jewish people are the people that are the light unto the nations. The Jewish people are the people who are inspiring, who are uplifting, who are transforming. The Jewish people are the people who are the greatest champions of their friends, their neighbors, the community, the country where they live in, lifting people up with the most incredible message that every human being is created in the image of God. When Kanye West is thinking about the Jewish people, what should be first and foremost in his mind? The Jewish people are the ones who taught us that every human being is created in the image of God, which is a message that every human being has value and that every person has the ability to achieve anything that they put their mind to, because this is the most empowering message of all. How are we going to be able to deal with the challenges that exist in the world today? The corruption, the violence. It's through being a light into the nations. It's through sharing this vital message. People need to hear this. The Kanye West of the world need to hear this idea. When they hear this idea, it will uplift, it will empower. No longer are Jews running the media, running the banks, right? Jews are the light unto the nations. Such an approach will lead to thousands upon thousands of non-Jews fulfilling the 7 mitzvahs, thus fulfilling God's commands, thousands upon thousands of times. What's more, there's a benefit for the Jewish people as well. Namely, the very effort will cause the world to relate to the Jewish people differently. When they see that the Jewish people are making an effort to influence the world to be a more just and righteous place, and that the Jewish people are concerning themselves with the welfare of the entire neighborhood, country, and mankind, all the Jewish nations of the world will see that the Jewish people are a light unto the nations. This will only increase Jewish prestige, because Jews are not about the media, Jews are not about the banks, Jews are not about Hollywood. To be a Jew means to be a light unto the nations. When we will be a light unto the nations, that is how they're going to respond. Don't be embarrassed. Believe it in you. Believe that you are created in the image of God, and then it will be an authentic message that you're sharing with the people that are around you. And this is why the Torah records the message of the flood, which took place with Noach, a person who was not Jewish, because the Torah absolutely has a universal message for all of mankind. It is not just for the Jewish people. It's not just for the synagogue, for the shul, for the yeshiva. That's not what it's all about. We have a responsibility to all of the nations of the world. And in fact, this is what it means to be Jewish. This is why God chose us. This is why there exists such a thing as the Jewish nation, to be role models, to be a light unto the nations, in order for us to be able to change the world. This is ultimately what it means to be a Jew. If this is our message, if this is our identity, the Kanye West will not just fade away and disappear, but will become our biggest fans, our biggest cheerleaders. They'll become our biggest advocates. Want to let everyone know that beginning Wednesday next week, 6 Wednesdays, starting November 2nd from 7:30 to 9 p.m., we're beginning our next JLI course. It will be in person and on Zoom, although I strongly encourage people to come in person, but it will be available on both. It is a thought-provoking JLI course that answers your every questions on perceiving, defining, and approaching God. Right? The bottom line is God is the core, the center of all Judaism. What is God? How do you define it? How do you speak to it? We're going to be looking at 25 foundational and fundamental questions about who, what, why, where, and how God is. Sign up, join the class. If you're not sure if it's for you, come to the first class, see if you like it. Absolutely no commitment, absolutely no obligation to continue. So check out this class. I hope you'll join us on Wednesday.